Hello?
And get started. There's still plenty of seats. We have a couple of seats in the front. And if I could please ask the sponsors, all my sponsors, first of all, we could not be here if it were not for our sponsors. So how about a big round of applause for our sponsors? And if I could have my tech team turn the music off. Thank you. And if I could please ask my sponsors, I don't know if they can hear me over there. I know this is the networking room, but I do have to ask everyone if we could please be quiet because we are streaming this event. We have a couple hundred people watching this on stream, and we want to make sure that they can hear the panel. So if you have conversations, if you could take them out into the foyer, I politely ask that of you all. So thank you, and thank you again for our sponsors being here today. As I mentioned, one of the things that we do at this event travels all over North America. We do this event in 30 different cities. Every city, we have our honorees, and what qualifies you as an honoree, we think all cybersecurity practitioners are honorees for all your hard work. But there are a group of you that were nominated by your peers for your extra hard work that you've done in the industry. So we're here right now to thank you for your hard work. And FutureCom, we have a little bit of appreciation, a token of our appreciation. So let's start with Tanya Hubie from MasterCard. She's the Vice President, Business Leader. Tanya, are you here still from MasterCard? Tanya? See, this happens all the time. These honorees are so important, they have to leave. She was here earlier. Stephen Lang from Edgewell. He's Senior Network Security Engineer. All right, congratulations. Stephen Havicon, Security Engineer from Charter Communications. Come on up, Stephen. Reginald Williams, Senior Information Protection Advisor at Cigna, who has been a great supporter of FutureCon for years. I'm so happy, Reggie, congratulations for all your hard work. Peter Schweiss is the Director of Technology and Operations at Hope Ignites. All right, congratulations. Linnell Artemisi, Cybersecurity Manager at Boeing. Congratulations. Kevin Campy is the Director of MIS at the City of Kirkwood. Kevin, are you still here? It's close to my city. All right, well, I guess he had to go back to work. Someone else from Charter, Kent Herbst, Senior Manager of IT. Kent, come on up. Congratulations. Kanthi Parmagaro is the IT Solutions Architect at Melpor Sigma. All right, Kanthi, congratulations. John Poole is the EVP at Convergent DS. John, come on up. Everyone knows John in this community. All right. John Koshling is the ISSO at Boeing. John, are you still here? Come on up. Congratulations. Jason Kettler is the VP of Information Security at Mineta Group. Jason, are you still here? Jamie Ritchie is the Director of IT from Eagle Security. All right, congratulations. Eric Wilkin is IT Security Analyst at Delta Dental of Missouri. Congratulations, Eric. Dave Foster is the IS Manager of Security and Operations at St. Luke's. Congratulations. I love that this is my hometown because I actually know all these companies, and when we travel, I have no idea what the companies are. Carol Sharp is Lead Security Governance Analyst at Centene. Congratulations. Brian Thompson is the IR Manager at Mallinckrodt Pharmaceuticals. All right. Amy Boyer is Information Security Analyst at First Bank. Great story about Amy. She actually, a few years back, was just getting in the industry, and she volunteered for FutureCon, and now she's a practitioner working for First Bank. Our fabulous keynote speaker, Renita Rose, Vice President, Audit Manager, CyberSecurity at Wells Fargo. Renita Rose. Thank you, Renita. All right, Daniel Stamer, who is on our panel today, Chief Information Officer, Senior Vice President at Sullivan Bank. Thank you, Daniel, for being here. Roftiel, Constantine. I can't do it. Barry-Wehmiller, Global CISO. Thank you so much, and thank you for saying yes to be on the panel. Tina Lampe is a technology partner, IT director at DIRECTV, and one of our panelists. Thank you. And last but certainly not least, we love Zachary Lewis. He's such an influential leader in the St. Louis community. He's the AVP IT, Chief Information Security Officer at the University of Health Sciences and Pharmacy in St. Louis, and he is our moderator today. Thank you, Zachary, for all your hard work. So I am going to turn it over to Zach, and let's welcome our panel. And before you welcome our panel, one thing, if you guys have questions, don't forget my tech team is in the back, right here. Let's get on mic. Don't be afraid to ask a question because you don't want to be on the microphone. We're all here together, and we want our virtual audience to hear us. So let's welcome our panel.
All right, welcome everyone. We're going to start with introductions of our panel. I think Tina is going to start. I'm going to have Tina introduce herself, a little bit about what she does, where she came from, and then, Tina, I also want you to answer a question for me. This is an unscripted question. Growing up, I went into a house one time and I saw a guy making DIRECTV cards so they could get all the channels for free. And they cracked all that stuff. They stopped it. How are people still compromising and getting free DIRECTV? And how are they doing it, and where do you find those people? Tell me about that.
All right. Is the microphone working? Okay. Hi, I'm Tina Lampe. I've been in St. Louis my whole career. I started out at AT&T for many years, and now I work for DIRECTV. It's a 100% remote position. At AT&T, I was in software development, project management. I recently got my master's in cybersecurity from Maryville University. I'm on the board here for InfraGard in St. Louis for InfraGard and ISACA. So, and I get my DIRECTV free because I'm an employee, and that's a benefit of working for DIRECTV.
Okay. All right, thank you. Next we have Dan. Dan, you're going to have to tell us the same stuff, but instead of about DIRECTV, I hear your favorite number, and your lucky number is 42, and that seems to be the answer for everything. So tell us a little bit about why that is.
That's strange. I don't remember 42 being my lucky number.
It is.
I'm clueless. Why is 42 my lucky number? It's such a secret, I don't even know.
Okay. Well, tell us about yourself.
Okay, I'm Dan Stamer. I've been in the financial industry ever since I was in the military, did some stuff, got out, got into working for a data center and worked there for about 18 years. Then got out of that. I did some work on my own for 2 years. Then I was asked by what was Sullivan, or Bank of Sullivan at the time, to come down there and do some consulting work. And I said, I'm tired of consulting. I want a full-time job. And either lucky for them or unlucky for them, I've been working for them for 19 years. And I started in this business when firewalls weren't really a thing. We just had data connection between our data center and banks, and cybersecurity definitely was not in. So I've seen a lot in my time, and it's changed, and it's going to evolve probably just as much in the next 19 years.
Thanks, Dan. I think you and John Poole could probably share some stories. You've been in it for a long time. Roftiel, are you ready for your question?
I don't think so, Zach. Do I have to have a special question, or can I just do a normal intro?
Nope. Special question. Answer the same thing along with what you know about German GPS systems.
German GPS systems.
Specifically. German-made ones only.
Well, that's actually interesting because I actually wrote a paper years ago. Do you know this or just making this up?
I know.
Okay, I don't know. All right, I'll weave that into my intro. So, Roftiel Constantine, I'm the CISO for a company here in town called Barry-Wehmiller. Anybody heard of Barry-Wehmiller? A few, okay. It's a 13,000 person company. It's headquartered in Clayton. Most of our operations are, about 2/3 of our 13,000 folks are here in the US. We have a big European presence and also a foothold in Asia as well. And we're a manufacturing company. And that's important because it's interesting listening to some of the folks here in the group here. I heard from Centene. I heard we have some charter people. We have some Boeing defense. And when it comes to cyber, you think about threats. The threats that are targeting them are not the threats that are targeting me. They're different from the threats that are targeting my fellow panelists. So manufacturing, not big on the whole targeted list. I will tell you that about my past. I also did a little time in the military, a lot longer than I expected. I was in there for 25 years. I joined for 4. It turns out I liked it a lot. And my last posting was over at Scott Air Force Base, and we decided just to stick around St. Louis for a little bit. That was 10 years ago. We're still here. Turns out we like this place a lot more than we thought we would. I live in Kirkwood now. Zach asked about the German GPS system. So years ago, in my military days, I wrote a paper. It was actually published, and it was comparing the European GPS system called Galileo, and my paper's point was, why do they need Galileo? We have GPS that works just fine. And it's interesting timing because what's happening in the world today, but this was, 15 years ago when I was writing this. It was supposed to be the Europeans' first real move away from the U.S. When it comes to military types of things, because GPS runs everything in the military. It did 15 years ago, too. So that's what I know a little bit about the European GPS system, which I imagine they're going to start pumping a lot more money into in the coming years, perhaps. I don't know.
Excellent answer. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Now you all know more about our panelists than they even know about themselves, Dan. First, real question. And Roftiel, you can start since you already have the mic there. What are the most pressing emerging cybersecurity threat organizations face today, and what are you doing about them?
Yeah, so the fact that we're all here today and that all the vendors are here today is just, it speaks volumes to the fact that there are a lot of different threats out there. And how you determine the most pressing, who knows? But I mentioned that we have a lot of operations in Europe. We have a lot of customers in Europe. We sell a lot of our machines to European businesses so they can make things over there. I'll say one of the biggest threats that we have, it's not your normal threat, but it's all this new European Union regulations that are coming out. We have to worry about the Cyber Resiliency Act, the CyberSecurity Act, the Artificial Intelligence Act, the NIS2, I forget what that stands for, NIS2 Act, the machinery regulation. All this new regulation has been coming out. A lot of it follows the model of the GDPR that came out back in May of 2018, where either you comply or you face a lot of financial risk if you don't comply. And each of these that I rattle off, and there's other regulations and acts and directives that are out there in the European space, it's just difficult to make sure that you comply with. And that's one of our biggest concerns. You can never forget about ransomware. It still happens all the time. We were on a call with our insurance company this morning. We talk with them every quarter, giving us the updates, and they said, yeah, it's still happening. What's different, though, in the ransomware space is the bad guys aren't bothering to encrypt. It's a lot of work for them to encrypt. It's a lot of work for them to unencrypt. They hope the key works when they give it to you. But the ransom is still happening. They're just doing it more efficiently from their standpoint. They're breaking in, they're stealing your files, and they're leaving and they're saying, hey, pay me a couple $1 million so I don't publish it. So there's a lot more risks. I want to save some for my two panelists, so let's see what they have to say.
Tina, go for it.
So from my perspective, a lot of the upcoming threats or the threats in the future involve AI, both the new attack vectors via Gen AI and AI, as well as the traditional threats, ransomware, malware, supply chain, et cetera, that are being the threat actors are enhancing their activities based in using AI. So I really think that we need to ensure that our defenses, we have AI present in fighting these threats. Otherwise, we are going to fall behind.
Okay, I agree. AI is probably the one thing that scares me the most because it's really going to affect everyone. And email, I think that email threat is by far the biggest thing that compromises us. And I think AI is going to have a great influence on tricking us into believing that email is going to be legitimate, and it's bad now. It's going to get that much worse when AI is a lot more popular. That scares me more than anything else. We have a lot of safety mechanisms. I work for a financial institution, and so by regulations, we have to have safeguards in place. We have auditors come in, examiners come in, and make sure that we're doing what we say we're doing and safeguarding people's money. So in our industry, I feel like we do a good job, but like anything else, nothing is foolproof. And just trying to stay ahead of these people is probably the biggest scare. And AI, I think, is going to make it worse for us.
I guess with that in mind, thinking about AI and email threat and ransomware, what are the essential components of a well-prepared incident response plan? What should be included in that, and where do you think some organizations are falling short? Dan?
Start with that. Yeah. Okay. We are almost mandated to do incident responses every year, and we actually have a third party come in and basically moderate ours, which I really like because they kind of really put us to the test to make sure that what our IR is doing what it's supposed to be doing, because you don't want to find out when a true incident happens, is your IR plan really legitimate? Is it doing what you need it to do? And so we take it very seriously when we do our IR testing. And we go through each step of an incident. We will choose different ones every year, and we try to pick ones that are very relevant to us. And so we'll go through our process of what our incident response is per that circumstance and talk it through. The moderator will go through, they'll usually sit with me before we do it. I'm sorry, I'm choking. But anyway, we'll sit down together and talk about it, and they try to make the scenario as realistic as possible, which I think is very crucial. And then during the tabletop IR testing, we will literally enact that particular scenario. And then we'll go through the whole thing from beginning to end. And then at the end, we notate what we did good at, we notate what we did bad at, and we determine what we need to improve ourselves from future.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Tina?
So from my perspective, a good incident response plan includes the roles and the responsibilities, outlines the communication plan, the management and containment, the response, and then also ensures that you have a post-incident review of things that you can do better. My experience is also that, and I am not in the financial industry, but the things that companies fall short on, from my perspective, are making sure the roles and responsibilities, information stays updated, as well as letting the incident response plan get stale and not exercise it.
Okay, I'll add a couple things. First, going back to to previous answers, we heard up here AI being used by the bad guys. It is becoming harder and harder for humans to figure out if an email is a phish or not. So you can just assume that your traditional failure rates on the AI phish tests are going to get worse and worse. So you kind of have to, you're forced into adopting a zero trust approach, which says basically one of the core tenets of zero trust is assume breach. Assume the bad guy is in. Of course, you still want to do all your phish training to do your due diligence to keep them out, but assume they get in, then what? And as we do all the basic blocking and tackling, the patching, the multi-factor authentication, the segmentation of your network to protect your vital assets. But then assume all that fails too. Then you fall back on your incident response plan, which is one of your last mechanisms of hope, right? That you have a good IR plan. And what I try to do with ours over the years, as it's matured, is try to make a lot of decisions ahead of time. And these are kind of easy things to think about, but they're not always easy to figure out in the heat of the moment. For example, who will be the incident response leader? Is it one person? Hopefully not. Is it two or three? Let's identify them, get them ready, so they know that they could be called upon to do this. Who is authorized to talk to your cyber insurance company if an incident goes down that road? Have that already clearly spelled out so your team doesn't have to figure that out, again, in the heat of the moment. Reach out ahead of time and know who your FBI contact is. You don't want to meet your FBI cyber person for the first time during an incident. You don't need to. For me, it's easy. They work 2 blocks from me in Clayton. A lot of you are probably in the local area. Meet with them ahead of time. They really like to come out. Talk with your Secret Service rep. Talk with your CISO rep. They're here. They're very outgoing. They want to meet with people like us because that's part of their remit. That's part of their job responsibility to get out there and talk to you. Meet as many of these people ahead of time. Find out what services they provide. Find out who on your team is authorized to tell the local FBI that, hey, we've been attacked. At what point do you make that decision? Think about that ahead of time, because these are all decisions that will come up, and that's the importance of doing these exercises. If you have a good incident response exercise, a good tabletop, it will force you into making those decisions. And like I think you both said, update the plan. Update the plan following an incident, following a pen test, following perhaps a new business area that your company is moving into geographically, maybe a new line of business they're getting into, perhaps just acquired a company in a new space they haven't operated in. There's lots of good opportunities to update it. When you update the plan, what do you also need to make sure you get rid of? The old versions of the plan. That's the last thing you want. Happens all the time. You got 10-person team and half are working off an older version. That's very frustrating. So a lot of these simple little blocking and tackling things make a big difference. And of course, as both of you mentioned, the value of this thing is in the core of the plan, who does what, when, and where, and who's on the team. But some of these other things that the more you can think about ahead of time, the better. Contact information, not only for contacting your team, but can you reach out to your vendors? Because guess what? A lot of us have vendors that are very important to us day to day, especially in an incident. And you don't want to be fumbling around. You want to have the list right in front of you. All the stuff you can do ahead of time with not much effort, preparation, and it makes such a difference when this is in front of you. And so the heat of the moment's tense enough. This can bring it down a lot of temperature, a lot of degrees of temperature, I'll say.
Yeah, when you're running through an incident, thinking is not something you want to have to do. Just having the steps already on paper really helps simplify that. Dan, you mentioned testing the plan, and I think we've heard about CISA already. They do offer tabletop exercises. You can run through your IRP with them, really put it to the test and see how things land. So definitely reach out to them for context. But staying in that theme of incident response plan, and if you can't answer this, great. If you can't, we'll skip. And without giving too many details around the event, have you ever experienced an event and learned something from that? And if you have learned something, what is like a key nugget takeaway that you guys have learned from an incident that is now in your plan for future?
So can I give you a lessons learned, not from a personal experience, but from a
Like
known
from
experience?
Dish Network or something? Or?
No. I think, so if we think back to last July, right, we had the whole CrowdStrike issue. And while it was not a cyber issue, there are a lot of good lessons learned that come from that. If you think about the airlines involved, you can think about this as, the whole realm of good versus bad. So if you start with the good, how American Airlines handled that, they canceled like 400 flights the first day, 50 flights the next day, but they already had a solution in place the same day the incident occurred. They had a proactive approach to being prepared. Another lesson learned that they performed is Southwest Airlines the year before had a issue with weather and could not locate or reschedule their crew members, and so they were down and unable to fly for like a week and lost like $1 billion. American Airlines looked at this and realized that they were also vulnerable in this area and proactively made adjustments so that they were prepared. On the other end of the spectrum, you have Delta, who, they had issues. They ended up losing like $500 million or something. They had to cancel like 7,000 flights. They did not have a proactive approach to preparing and looking through the industry at areas of the business that were vulnerable if an issue occurred. The other lessons learned to take out of this is that even though the initial incident was not a cyber incident, the malicious actors looked at that incident and started, taking that opportunity to start, attacking or threatening.
Okay, I'm going to go with COVID. That was a good lesson for us. When COVID hit, we met basically like an incident response plan. We basically, the heads met and started talking about how can we protect ourselves and protect our customers. So we put a plan together and we closed our doors and could only drive through only and only accept people by invitations. We also made it work to where we could work from home. And as a godsend, we were already had that in place without realizing we had it in place because there were certain people that were working from home and we could easily adapt to it, which we did. It was pretty simple. We had 0 clients and we had Meraki firewalls, and we could just hand this to the individual and they go home straight, plug it in, and voila, they were working remotely, which really helped out us tremendously because I've seen so many different companies say, well, they were scrambling, getting all these hardware, laptops and stuff putting together. Ours was really simple. We just had to basically configure these things, so it worked out very well for us. The one thing that we did learn was our phone system, while it was kind of antiquated, really didn't conform to remote. We made it work to the best of our ability to where we could forward the calls to people's cell phones, but then when they were making outbound calls, we couldn't figure out how to go. So we did do a couple things to make it work, but we've altered that. We got a different phone system. Now we could easily, if we had COVID over again, which I hope we never experience and no one else experiences, we would be able to do everything remotely, and you guys wouldn't even know any differences. So our lesson learned there was being flexible and be able to react based on the circumstance there.
I'll add a quick one here. Yeah, I think it's always helpful to learn from your own incidents. You always want to learn something from that. It's also helpful to learn from other people's incidents. And I'll take us back to the summer of 2023. When 2 casinos got attacked by being social engineered, by spoofed. It was MGM and Caesars, I believe, right? And people calling up say, "Hey, I'm from your IT service desk, or I'm from the IT team, and I need access because of whatever reason." And so that happened, and we saw that, and we said, could that happen here? And we sat down with our 2 service desks and learned, actually, yeah, that same attack could have happened here. So, and we quickly put in place some measures to make sure that it wouldn't happen. We followed up with a pen test a couple months later to have an external third party confirm that, yes, our measures were sufficient. But there, you observe something that happens. It's in the news. It's hard to not take advantage of. But you're always got to be afraid. Could you be the next target from the Lapsus group, or could some other copycat group try to break in? They sure could have, but anyway. So that's one thing I recommend to all teams out there. If it happens to someone else, you guys could be next. You never know on the target list. If you get hit with ransomware today, you could get hit tomorrow by some other ransomware group, right? It's not like you get hit once and you're immune for a while. You're not, and you have to assume something bad is going to happen tomorrow. So the more you can learn from what happens inside your company, your organization, as well as what happens to those around you, take advantage of all of that and try to absorb and learn from and improve on those lessons learned that you observe.
Yeah, that's great. And thinking about the CrowdStrike incident with the airlines, third parties supply chain becomes very important in that. So we've seen a lot of recent supply chain attacks. We've had MoveIt and different things along that line. What steps are you guys taking to sort of strengthen that area of your program, and how are you preparing for those different attacks against your third parties? Tina.
Yeah, so I can start. When I think of supply chain, I think really 2 areas of risk. The first area is the supplier or the vendor themselves, which we need to take measures, around contractual obligations, ensuring that the vendor has some acceptable level of cybersecurity, transparency, communication if an incident occurs, and all of those wonderful things. On the other hand, if that vendor or any actually supply vendor has access into your internal systems, you need to make sure that you follow the same rules, the rule of least privilege, and network segmentation. Just don't give them the keys to the kingdom. I think the Target incident in 2013 was an example of a vendor having too much access into the network and somebody hacking in and causing all kinds of issues.
Okay, I'll kind of feed off of that. And also on a talk over there where they were talking about the IP cameras getting compromised and then getting into the video recorder and then getting into their network and everything. And that kind of rolls where Tina was saying is isolate your segment, your network and everything. We are very highly sensitive to this being a bank. We're highly regulated. So we probably err on the cautious side and really segment as much as we can with our third party vendors and everything. So the IP cameras that are in our network don't even touch anything. You can't get to them without trying to go through other mechanisms where we have, it could be like 3 tiers to get to them. And so you can't get to that. We just segment everything off. So if a third party would get compromised or anything like that, in theory, they should have very limited access to our core stuff and everything. Windstream, they had that incident and everything several years ago. You just have to really, it's impossible to identify everything. You can't. So you try to mitigate as much as you can beforehand, and segmentation is probably the big factor in everything. We were also affected by CrowdStrike. Very fortunately, our game plan worked fairly well. Our customers didn't even know we were touched. None of them, fortunately. It affected some of our employees not being able to work right away, but we were down a very, very short time period and had everybody up within an hour or two. So you just have to try to put in a process to where you try to mitigate as much as possible, and then when an incident happens, that you just address it and try to make it better.
Sorry. I'll add that all of us very likely have lots of third-party and a magnitude larger number of fourth-party suppliers, right? It's just the nature of our business. And a lot of them have a decent amount of access into our IT networks, into our data. And a mistake we can make is when we first sign a contract with a company, perhaps even before that, we've probably done some due diligence. We've taken a look at their SOC 2 report. We've done some other assessment as to do they meet our security standards. Then we often just put them aside, say, okay, they're trusted. Let me go on to the next vendor that I have to deal with. And you can fall into the trap of trusting them for too long and not going back every year and looking at their SOC 2 audits every year, or doing some kind of, every company has to decide what that balance is, but doing some relook at their security measures that they take. Did they change? What's their SOC 2 audit look like this year? Did the auditor find some problems that you need to know about? Or you may want to have a conversation with that third-party vendor to make sure, hey, are you guys going down a weird path here? We have to think about finding someone else. We're able to fix that problem. There are ways out there that you can do it, but I strongly recommend don't just make it a one-time assessment and then they're in the trusted bucket, because they can't be. Some of the biggest vendors out there have had, in the news, have had problems in the past year or two. And you can never just rest easy because, again, they have such deep access into all of our networks. So that'll be my biggest recommendation. And then, again, assume breach. Assume CrowdStrike happens again tomorrow. What are you going to do? What did you learn from the July 19th event last summer? Did you update your incident response plan? For example, maybe it's a disaster recovery. It might not be a security incident, but it's a disaster, right? If sounds like you did awesome, but you're the exception, though, when it comes to people not being impacted. A lot of people were. A lot of companies were down. I was impacted personally because I was on vacation when Delta Airlines couldn't get me home for 3 days. I had to stay for 3 days. It was actually quite nice. My family was very happy. So, and I'm not a CrowdStrike customer, so even that was bonus also. So it was really, really good. But again, you want to watch and learn. You want to assume the breach, assume they're going to get in, and do all those other things that I mentioned earlier, all the basic blocking and tackling, so that if they do get in, the blast radius is really limited down to, Tina, you said least privilege. Give them the least amount of access that they need to do their job and protect you, and whatever other services they're providing. It does get difficult when you go to the fourth level of their vendors. Who are their vendors? Who are they working with? And that gets really complicated. That's when it comes down to know your threats. If it's a bad guy, is he working in through, coming to you, coming to Charter, coming to Boeing Defense? Are they coming in from a fourth to a third party to get to you? They might. In my line of work, that's probably not happening. We're just manufacturing. But these other companies, they need really to know their threats and know what type of adversary they're up against and take, the commensurate level of defensive actions that they need to.
I would like to add to Roftiel's due diligence on vendors. We are basically mandated to do due diligence, and we have to identify our critical vendors. So every year we vet out our critical vendors, which we have to report to the board of directors. And we have to look at their SOC 1, SOC 2, and determine if they're not compliant to our standards. And we look at a lot of things on these vendors every single year. And if there's an issue with it, we try to identify it. So basically, when you're writing or getting into a contract with these critical vendors, make sure that you have something in writing that you can get it out if they're not complying with certain things and they're making your business a threat, because that's super critical. We do it with all of our critical vendors. If there's an issue that we see and it meets their criteria, we can get out of that contract, because it's too damning on us if we allow someone, a third party, to make us vulnerable. So that's really critical, and so I'm glad you mentioned that.
Awesome. Let's jump a little bit into threat intelligence and maybe some information sharing. We briefly touched on FBI and CISA earlier. What role do these sort of agencies or other companies or partnerships are you guys working with in terms of gathering information, sharing information, getting whatever you need for your company and your team? What are you looking at there?
Okay, I'll start with this. There's ISAC has a lot of different agencies depending on what field you're in and everything. Ours is FSIAC, and I am very active in it. I do get a lot more emails than I care to, but I'd rather get them than not get them. There's a lot of information sharing that we do. There's times that I will get some threat intel from them before I'll get it through my other channels. So I like it. And we do communicate quite a bit. There's a fraud intel that I belong to, a couple other ones, and I think they really do a good job. I really like CISA also. They do a free analysis to where they'll scan your front-facing websites and everything, which I think is great, because if they find something vulnerable on there, they will call you up and let you know, hey, Dan, we just determined that there is a vulnerability on this web server here, and it's no charge to you. And I think they do it to anybody. I don't think there's any stipulations. You don't have to be in any industry. If you're a business, you can write out to CISA and they sign up for them, and they'll do this vulnerability scan for free. And it's kind of foolish if you don't. Something free, why not?
Yeah, I think they also offer some DNS monitoring too. You can point your DNS out there and they can check for that. Thank you all. It's your tax dollars hard at work.
Yes, and that's what they say. You're paid for it, might as well use it.
I don't deal in the threat space, so I don't really have anything to add.
I'll save you a special one for later.
Okay.
Good on you, Zach. So there's a lot of threat intel companies out there that will provide threat streams. That's very helpful if you can ingest it and make actionable use out of it. That's the biggest challenge. You can pay a lot of money for threat streams, threat intel, but is your team able to take that and action it and make it actionable? Can you provide the richness that you need around it to apply to your environment? That's really the big challenge. switching a course in my answer to this, my biggest source of threat intel, and I encourage all of you to try this out, is talk, if you're in a leadership position, talk to your security operations center on a regular basis. They're the ones that know what type of attacks that are actually, no kidding, happening to you. They're often tied in well with other peer SOC groups as well, other professional organizations, other threat intel, that they can offer context around what's happening, what they're seeing. But I meet with mine for an hour every Friday. I learn the deep dive details as to what they're seeing, who in our company is getting targeted. Is it a geographic area? Is it a certain functional areas? Our sales guys? Is it the engineers? Is it the finance or HR people? Who is it? And I submit that your most valuable threat intel is often right in front of you. You just need to recognize it for yourself and then have your team recognize it as well. That is, because right there, that is the threats that are coming to you. And then going back to I started answering this, if you can find a way, now that you're a lot smarter as to what threats are actually happening to you, if you can figure out a good threat feed that you may be paying for or may get it free from one of the government services, how to make that, how to adjust that, modify it, enrich it so that it really is applicable and effective and actionable by your team. Because again, too often it's not. This stuff briefs really, really well. And it is really good if your team can make use of it. And that's the hardest corner to turn. Cool stuff. Can we actually use it? Does it go into our SIM? Does it generate those automatic alerts that I need it to do? Sometimes yes, but too often no, it never really pans out. So make sure when you're looking at threat intel service provider, get a lot of good demos and make them real world demos. Make sure that it actually does do all the well integrated things that it says it can do. But again, your teams know a lot of the information that you need to know. You just got to pull it from them. And often they're extremely forthcoming with that because they're happy that someone's asking about what is it that they're doing, what are they seeing all the time. Those are my best meetings of the week, every Friday at 10 o'clock.
Our SOC would be happy if anyone showed up to talk to them. We keep them in a basement, locked away. I'm going to open up questions to the audience. If you guys have anything here or online, what? We're going to bring a mic, or you holler it and I have to repeat it. So less work for me if you talk into a microphone.
So in our org, and I'm sure I'm not alone, one of our biggest threats is our employees and what they bring into our environment. And one of the things that we're trying to put our arms around is training. What's meaningful training? Like we do phishing training, we do all that, the stuff everyone tells you to do. But how have you found a way to reach the employees in a meaningful way that reduces the risk, knowing that you can't ever eliminate a human letting someone in the front door?
That is $1 million question. I don't know anyone who has the foolproof answer on that. We try not to do too much training because you get a training burnout. We have a monthly training session, and then it aggregates, and then it shows who's done what and everything. So it's really nice because you have to take a test afterwards to see what your retention is and everything, so that helps out. The biggest thing is trying to identify what repercussions it is if, let's just go for clicking on emails and everything, because that's probably the most prominent one that people tend up doing, and they just like clicking and everything. So I send out emails quite a bit just reminding people that we have a report to abuse button in our Outlook. Don't be afraid. I'll never, ever say you're an idiot for sending this, because this happens all the time. We'll send out a notice, hey, we're going to be sending out this information. It's not spam, it's legitimate. 2 minutes later, abuse. And I just politely say, thank you for sending this to abuse. However, this is a legitimate email and such and such. So basically trying to identify why things are so critical. What would happen if you truly clicked on that link and it bypassed all of our 10 security, different layers of security, and what it would mean to you, what it would mean to the bank, and try to emphasize that into them. And I never like to be the type that wants to be negative to anybody, because I think, or shame them, because if you shame someone, they're not going to reply back to you. If they click on it, they're not going to let you know.
So a vendor one time called those type of people serial clickers. And so I thought that was pretty funny. I think what may work, coming from AT&T, where you had to do your training once a year and then you forgot about it, right? So I think that there's statistics out there that shows that knowledge is retained better if you have more frequent, very short training modules. Now, does more knowledge translate to reduce risk? I think that's a question, right? And the other item is there are vendors out there that deal with like behavioral science and training science, and they try to what they call nudges at the point of risk. That seems like it would work really well. I don't know if there are statistics around that, but that seems very interesting to me.
Great points from Dan and Tina. I'll add 2 or 3 short ones as well. So what I like to do is, and I agree, Tina, keep it short, keep it updated, keep it current, and keep it relevant. And by relevant, I think the best way is to use real-world examples. Pick out, and I have my email security team do this, pick out a couple cases where one of our team members identified that they were in the middle of being attacked and they were able to figure out something and they're able to avoid being attacked. I want to find that person, I want to find that case, I want to raise them up, I want to shine the light and train, and from that standpoint, so this is the golden example of how we should behave. And it's real world, and it's really to one of our team members. And we've done that many times. And those cases are out there. You just got to go ask, tell your team to look for them, and you'll find them. And that really helps. Yeah, so laud and applaud those people that do it right. And then for me, in our company, I mentioned that we're global. We have 13 official languages. When it comes to training, and do it. Pick training modules that are in these other languages, not that they're in English audio and subtitle along the bottom. Go the extra mile, figure out where some good training is available in their language. That just makes a big difference as well. They'll pay a lot more attention to it. I'll tell you, my military days, again, this is 10 years ago, cyber wasn't as big a deal, but we always had annual IT security training, and it was the same 45-minute block over and over again for like 8 or 9 years, and it never changed, and it was terrible. And yeah, you never want to fall in that trap, because then that's not only a bad teaching method, it's terrible, but then people start losing respect for you and your team, your brand, and you don't want your brand to go low as a security person. You have to maintain it high, and you do it by all the good things that we said earlier, keeping it short, keep it updated, keep it relevant.
And I guess in a few years, agentic AI will just replace those people, and then we don't have to worry about it anymore. All right? We got time for one more question. What do we got? Do it.
Well, I'm not sure if it's a question or a statement. Wow, that's loud. Okay. All right. So my team's heard me say this many times, but we're all humans, and human nature, right? Human nature, so to change behavior, there has to be consequences or rewards, right? I mean, that's like the basic of human nature. One of the things we've done in our organization, so I hear a lot about the human factor, right? And it's so true. one thing we have done, it's more of a consequence than a reward, but it has been effective. We have about a 4 to 5% click rate through our monthly phishing testing in our organization. That's phenomenal. That's like beats most companies in the industry. One of the reasons we got to that, or one of the forcing factors behind that, is we tie our phishing click-through rates to our bonuses. So it will directly affect your income if you click that link. When we did that, we saw a significant reduction in people clicking those links. So food for thought, but I wanted comments.
So we've thought about those types of things, but you got to. And I don't know your situation, but are there unintended consequences? Meaning, are people hitting? And we've had this. I'll tell you, we've had someone who's so paranoid of opening or clicking on a phish mail that they submit almost everything to that abuse mailbox.
Absolutely.
Absolutely overloading my one guy I have. On a good month, we have 5,000 of those. And so if you have 1 or 2 people submitting 100 or 200 a day, so you have to worry about that side of it, people being afraid to open email. But, and your culture, it might work. In my company culture, I don't think it would work. Because, hey, I would, as a security person, that would be fantastic, right? Yeah, let's make it really painful and drive the point home, make everybody afraid. I'll be ultimately totally safe. But what impact will that have on business? And that's the part that you kind of got to figure out that balance.
Right. And it absolutely depends on your industry, right? And the impact of what that click can result in. In my industry, it can put you out of business, right? So it definitely comes down to your threat model, right? The threats against you and the impacts of what can happen when someone clicks that link. So in our industry, we're a financial data technology company. I work for Equifax, so you can imagine the impact if someone were to click that link, right? So, but absolutely, depending on the industry, you have to fine tune that. And we absolutely have some of those folks that are so paranoid that they just won't click it, even when it's legit. But the value outweighs that problem in our case, right? So you definitely have to tune it. We also intentionally don't use. You can make phishing emails extremely realistic, right? You heard some of that in the talks earlier today, right? AI is making it almost impossible for people to figure out whether it's fake or not. We are intentionally not doing some of that because we want people to learn from the experience of the phishing testing. We know that if we send out hyper-realistic emails, they're going to click on it. But we want people to pay attention and look for those details. So in order for them to look for those details and get the rewards of finding those details, we have to put those details in the emails. So I mean, you definitely have to fine tune the campaign to your industry and your threat model. Yeah, good point.
The one thing that we do when we do email phishing, we try to make it practical and realistic to our environment, and we'll send out phishing emails. And if you pay attention to your training, you're going to spot those innuendos that's going to tell, well, this is fake, this is not true. The other thing that we do is I tell people, if you're not sure, send it to abuse, use that report to abuse, but then follow up with another email saying, hey, I am not sure, I think this may be legitimate, but it's not, or it may not be. Can you check and let me know? So we will go through those, verify it, send it through our sandbox, verify, look at the headers and everything and determine if it's a legitimate email or if it's a phishing email. And if they do ask us, we will reply back to them. If they don't ask us and it's legitimate, I will reply back and tell them, hey, thank you for submitting it. This is actual legitimate email, and going forward. We don't have the volume you would have. So we don't have that issue, and it works out very well for us. Currently, we don't have any incentives. We had talked about that, but at this point in time, our click rate is pretty low, so we haven't had to do that. But the biggest thing is training your people to identify emails. Some will, some you could have training every single day and they'll click on it. There are some people you can't just teach.
Panelists, we have 3 minutes, so I want you to take 1 minute each, and give us 2 sentences of a very important takeaway. What do you want these people to know? Leave them a nugget of wisdom.
Yeah, we didn't get to the cloud security question, and I did have some nuggets there just because I deal in the SaaS environment daily, and there's some interesting things going on in that environment. But I guess my takeaway would be that AI is coming. Even if your company has policies that you're not to use AI, the bad guys out there are using AI. So you need to consider that in all of your defense practices.
Mine is know your network. Understand what you have. If you don't know what it is, you can't protect it. Segment as much as possible. I know it's sometimes very, very difficult, and my team that has to develop it and everything hates me for it because it's a lot harder to block stuff than just keep it in the same segment and let everything work right. But in the long run, you're going to be grateful because it's going to make it that much harder for the bad actors to get into your network.
I'll say from a large, big picture view, pick a framework that you want to follow or align to is another term we use. Whether it's the NIST framework, the ISO 27000 series, pick one and do a risk assessment, do a baseline of where you are today in accordance with that framework. Where do you want to be in 3 years? Do that gap analysis, come up with that roadmap. And what I'm describing here is very basic, but it can really make sure that you that you close any gaps, at least identify any gaps that you have. You can use that to get money for your program. You can really, when you tie yourself to something like NIST, ISO, or one of these other recognized frameworks, you're not on your own. You have backing of lots of smart people developing these frameworks. And you tie everything back to the framework. It really can set your team, set you up, set your organization up for a lot of good cybersecurity practices. And then I'll just say, always, I love to say it to my team, assume the bad guys are in the network. What defenses do we have in place to catch them, to prevent them from moving? But assume they're in. Now what? Who cares how they got in? They got in. There's so many ways to get in. We've talked about a lot of the different ways today, but my gosh, there's so many new ways. Service desk, that was a new way a year and a half ago. What's going to be next this summer? Who knows? But assume they're in. Now what are you guys going to do? That's the challenge, I think, to all of us.
Panelists, thank you for your nuggets of wisdom. Audience, thanks for being here. Stick around for prize giveaways. Thank you all very much.